Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for adjusting your schedules to be here at this time, representing the Oversight and Government Reform Committees. Chairman of the committee, Mr. Issa, the ranking member, Mr. Cummings. We would appreciate hearing from you as how you're operating this year with the 5% is projected as a result of the House resolution which was passed earlier this year. Mr. Issa.
I'd ask unanimous consent my entire opening statement plus collateral material be placed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, ranking member, these are great questions. Ranking member Cummings and myself have made the adjustments to live within our means, barely within our means. The fact is that both of us could oversubscribe this year and do more as a result. Clearly, I will finish out the year obligated greater than the funds available, and will then make appropriate cuts in the future obligations and hope that next year additional cost savings we can find will allow us to take care of those items that we'll defer at the end of the year. Every committee has an obligation to use the money wisely. I think our committee has done that. Every committee should look, though, at the Oversight Committee on a bipartisan basis, which has for multiple Congresses been moving toward greater transparency. Some of these investments include we broadcast every hearing, field hearing or here, to the greatest extent possible in real time. With rare exception, we stream, even from the field, hearings so that the public has full access. Every single one of our hearings going back through multiple chairmen are online today and available to the public. The investment in making sure that we're not just open in discussion, but we're open in all access is critical to our committee. We require open government. Every day, no matter who's in the chair, we work together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that we open up government. A number of initiatives coming out of our committee are designed to invest money in open government. The Data Act and other bills that are pending now before the Congress are designed to make government more accessible and ultimately, as a result, save money for the taxpayers. Sometimes you have to spend money to save money. I will tell you that it is my opinion, both having been a ranking member and now chairman, and looking at the balance between the executive branch and our branch, that we couldn't be more wrong-minded in what we're doing. Oversight under Speaker Pelosi and oversight under Speaker Boehner have been spoken of as extremely important. Committees of all jurisdiction have been instructed to do more oversight, and they have tried. Our committee has tried to do an even better job with less money. Having said that, let's just give a couple of comparisons that will be more fully laid out in my opening statement. There are 12,000 employees that work for or are the IGs of the executive branch. They spend over $2 billion, quote, maintaining an effort against waste, fraud, and abuse. We don't have within our committee's jurisdiction or funds, majority and minority combined, enough resources to simply assign one person per IG to see what they're doing, to see whether or not we can help or whether they're doing their job. The comparison between the executive branch's resources and ours shows the difference in whether or not we maintain properly the balance of power. Congress, both the House and the Senate, must do a great deal more if we're going to contain government. 2 generations ago, Harry S. Truman asked for and received at the start of World War II a special Senate committee. That task force, the Truman Commission, rooted out waste in government procurement at the start of a war. His resources were roughly equal to what our combined committee resources equal today. The investment saved countless hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, that would be tens of billions of dollars. We can save $80 billion if we do a better job of oversight. We can save a few $1,000,000 if we cut budgets. So today, I recognize that we'll be operating on 6.4% less next year, and we will do what we have to do. But I would say to this committee, on behalf of our constitutional responsibility, that we need to do a great deal more and we need to allocate the resources, vastly greater than we are, to oversight. I recognize that there will be asked for cuts everywhere. I would only say here today that cutting across the board, as we did last year and as we're being asked to do again this year, makes the exact wrong message. And Chairman Lundgren, you and I often are asked whether we'll vote for a 2% or a 5% across the board cut. Sometimes perhaps we do, sometimes we don't, but we always say it's not the right way to make cuts. The right way to make cuts are to say, where should you cut, where should you invest? I would say that there are opportunities to cut both in the executive branch and in this branch, but there are requirements that as government grows, that our oversight, whether done by this committee or other committees of the Congress, be in fact beefed up. And I would hope that we would make that point here today. And I lastly would say, many of the efficiencies that we are achieving have to do with leveraging electronic technology. And for the Chairman and Ranking Member, I want to thank you for the work you've done with the various committees to try to give us better resources in the House, which we leverage to try to do a better job. And I know there's an initiative by the end of the year to try to duplicate what we've been doing in our committee so that all the House's historic and current hearings be simulcast so that the public has the full access that our committee perhaps more uniquely stands with those groups in support of. I thank the gentleman and yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Cummings.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon. I ask unanimous consent that my entire statement be made a part of the record.
Without objection, it shall be.
First of all, let me say to you that I associate myself with the words of Mr. Issa. You know, our staff took a 5% cut, which meant that almost every employee on my staff took that cut. We've had a situation where, of course, now with the 6.4% cut, we're going to have to let people go. And the work is increasing. Chairman Issa is absolutely right. The job that we do is one of trying to bring about transparency as best we can and accountability. And we have on our side some major priorities, and one of them being foreclosure. We've taken the money that we have and we've used it effectively and efficiently, inquiring into foreclosure with regard to the banks, with regard to why this isn't happening and how we can solve it, addressing the head of the various agencies, including Mr. Geithner and others. But I got to tell you that the cut, I don't think is the way to go. Because I believe now that when people hear that government reform and oversight and government reform is even looking at them or thinking about them, they begin to tremble because they know that we're going to do a thorough job, they know that we're going to be fair, but they know that we're going to demand accountability. So when you take away resources, I think all that does is weaken our position, and at some point, the Chairman is right. The question is are you cutting in one place, but cutting money that could be used to make sure that you maintain that accountability? I'm proud of the job that we've been doing. And I've often said that we have to be very careful, not only with regard to government agencies, but to ourselves, that we do not become mired in a culture of mediocrity. And that's exactly what can happen. If you continue to pull resources away, you don't have the personnel that you do have are stretched to the limit. People then look at a situation where they say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to get a raise. I'm working harder and harder, and they don't mind working hard. I know for a fact that people on the chairman's staff and my staff work very, very long hours, sometimes late into the night because I get the emails. And I just think that if we are going to try to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish, another 6.4% cut, I think it does much harm. And again, we will work within the bounds that you set for us. I mean, we have no choice. But the question becomes at what price? And I just think that sometimes we've got to stop and think about what we're doing. I realize that everybody wants to have cuts here and cuts there, but sometimes, to be frank with you, it doesn't make any sense. And in this instance, with a committee like ours, doing the things that we do, I think other committees kind of depend on us. I mean, when they see what we're doing, a lot of times they either use the information that we're able to obtain, or they find ways to piggyback on what we're trying to do. And so I would urge, and I would hope that this practice that we're going through is not one where we're just sort of sitting here and just talking. I'm hoping that you're listening to us very carefully, because I think if there's any committee that deserves to have the resources that are necessary to do its job, it's this committee. And by the way, our responsibilities are only going to increase, because, again, we are demanding excellence from government. Just as we demand excellence from ourselves, we demand excellence from government. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back, and thank you very much.
I thank both of you for your testimony. You remind me of something that I heard from Supreme Court Justice Scalia this summer when he was speaking to a group of college students, and he asked them what they thought made us the freest nation in the world, what protected our freedoms in the governmental sense. And he said, it's not the First Amendment, not the Second Amendment, not the Fifth Amendment, not the Bill of Rights together. He said it's the construct of government that was established by our founding fathers. And by way of illustration, he said, what is the British equivalent of our president? It says the Prime Minister. But what does the Prime Minister have to be? A sitting member of Parliament. He said they have no concept. They have it difficult to wrap their minds around our different branches of government that create a tension in our Constitution for the purpose of protecting our freedoms from a overweening government. And he said, you know, we have a difference between the executive and the legislative branch. And that's why I've always been so strong on the concept of our responsibility, not just of legislation, but oversight of every committee, including your committee. And when you see the size of the federal establishment, primarily the executive branch, versus the size of the legislative branch, and we're supposed to do oversight, we have to make sure that we have the resources that allow us to do that oversight. Because if we are talking about saving trillions of dollars, the savings are going to be in the executive side, not the legislative side. And in order for us to make the proper decisions, we need to have the ability to look across the horizon of the executive branch. So I understand what both of you are saying. We are in very difficult times where we believed it was important for us to set the example. We did 5% cut for members, individual staffs, committee staffs, leadership staff, followed up by the 6.4%. Reluctantly, the Senate joined us. At least the information I have is the Senate voted a 5% cut for the remainder of fiscal year 2011 in March, which resulted in a 1.3% cut. And now they have decided that leadership, committee, and support staff on the Senate side will be cut by 6.3% next year, but personal staffs by 3.2%. So I think we are providing that leadership, but I do think you make a point. At what point do we say we have to have the resources to be able to really do the oversight that's necessary on a regular basis, no matter who's president, no matter what party happens to control the White House? I think as much as I always talk about the trespass on the proper legislative role and the executive role by the judiciary, I'm concerned about the trespass on our job by the executive branch, by way of regulation, by way of ignoring what we say in terms of legislation. So I thank you for the work you're doing. We have a difficult task. I mean, this is a very different set of hearings that we're having this year and last year. Usually people come before us seeing how much they're going to get an increase. And frankly, they didn't pay a whole lot of attention when they come here because they expect the increase. So we are on different times. Folks back home are hurting. I think they expect us to show an example, give an example. I think we are, but I think we also have to, at some point in time, say, how are we going to effectively do our role in curbing what I think is the excessive spending and the excessive power and reach of the federal government by way of the executive branch. I know that's not a question, it's a statement, but I thank you for it, Mr. Brady.
Well, Chairman Lundgren, in answer to your statement, just for example, the GAO, as an independent body under our auspices, shows in the last 5 years under these two administrations $1.8 trillion in the high-risk loss to the government. This is either failure to get revenue or excess spending. It began at $1.31 billion in 2003. This year, the 2011, is at 551. At that rate of lost revenue and or wasted money, we are looking at the savings that the super committee not only didn't get in 10 years, this could have gotten it to us in 5, but the rate of growth means that virtually half of our projected deficit is right here to be wiped out, but it's only wiped out by getting these high-risk groups to actually change. And many of these, as the Chairman and Ranking Member know, many of these high-risk losses, including the IRS's failures, these, in fact, are on the list every year for 10 years. So it's clear the executive branch won't do it, and if we keep doing what we're doing, plus or minus 6.4%, we won't get it done either.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If this 6.4% comes to you and your committee, will you have to lay anybody off?
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Well, both of us hire primarily a great deal of attorneys, and they're already paid far less than other attorneys, not just in this town, but around the country. So
that's not making an impact on me, but go ahead.
But well, you know, we're the investigative committee of the Congress, and I'm not a lawyer. The ranking member is an experienced lawyer, but there comes a point at which we don't get the caliber. So having a few less, but maintaining at least the minimum salary so these people don't have to leave elsewhere will become necessary. Both of the majority and minority are currently under our maximum cap, something we never envisioned. We usually bump up against our cap, but that's been part of what we've done in anticipation of the 6.4% cut.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Don't any of you want to say, darn it, we've changed our mind? We're going to give you the increase you need in order to do the oversight. We'll take it from somewhere else.
Darrell, I've known you.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Darrell, I've known you long enough that I knew I didn't need to have to say that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.